China, the Qin Dynasty, May 1 through 4, Continuous Learning World History. Key terms to know. There might be others, but the really big ones you need to remember are the Mandate of Heaven, what you learned about Confucianism in the last chapter, and feudalism, which is wealthy lords who ruled over lands they inherited and the peasants who lived and worked on them. Lords did not have to answer to a central government. This created a central government with little power. Bureaucracy. Government system of bureaus and appointed officials in the Qin Dynasty included 36 units known as commanderies and 3 court-appointed officials to oversee the commanderies. Civil governor, military governor, and the imperial overseer, all reporting to the emperor. You'll recall last week we talked about the Qin Dynasty, and we looked at some artifacts from that time. Earlier this week, you learned about the 3 isms of China: Taoism, legalism, and Confucianism, and you learned about the warring states. This was a collection of small states. There was not a unified China. And if you look at this image, this is an image of Qin Dynasty, who is considered the person who unified China under one rule. You'll notice that he has a pretty powerful look. He has a very large sword. He has the hat of an emperor. He has his hand outstretched. He was a legalist, so his hand outstretched, which I cut off a bit, might mean that he believes that he has ultimate authority. Any other things that you see in this image that make you think he's a strong leader? In fact, he was born in the Qin territory of the warring states. He was the adopted son of the king of the Qin region, and when he was 14 years old, he assumed the throne of the Qin territory. Quickly, he decided that the warring states were not a good plan. They were, in fact, fighting over little pieces of land, and it was not an effective way to lead. With 600,000 warriors, he collected and triumphed over all of the warring states and created them into one large state. The first thing that Qin did when he became the emperor was that he ended feudalism, which meant that he took all the small territories, took the power away from the lords, gave that to a centralized government that he could control, and he was the ultimate person in charge. He also required that all the former lords move to the city and give up all of their weapons, which Qin turned into bronze statues of himself. Although not a perfect leader in many ways, Qin is attributed to standardizing weights for all items so that everything would be weighed the same and processed the same. He standardized the money system away from like the cowrie shells that you saw in the Qin Dynasty into this current system, which was a round coin with a hole in the middle of it, which is still used in China. He standardized the language so that it was the same language with 3,000 characters that he put into a dictionary and said, you all must use these. Probably something we know the most about is the Great Wall that he instituted across China. It didn't always look as great as we see the walls now. And finally, he is the founder of the Qin Dynasty, and that dynasty in some way or other continued till the early 1900s. So it's a continuous type of government, the only one in the world that's continued that long. So those are pretty great accomplishments. While Qin did have some pretty major accomplishments, he had some pretty large setbacks, one of which was at a banquet for his birthday, where a Confucian scholar said that this dynasty isn't going to work unless you acknowledge the past and the ancestors and all the important things that they've done. This totally outraged Qin, and he had subsequently all of the books of Confucius burned, and didn't stop there, took 460 Confucius scholars and had them buried alive in a pit on his estate, and this included one of his sons. Qin also created some really great infrastructure in China, creating 1,500 square miles of roads throughout the country, and also posted large pillars of himself with his very legalistic laws that said that he was in charge and he was the only one who could create laws and rule the country. During his reign, Qin forced hundreds of thousands of his subjects to build a public works project such as roads, water canals, and his most famous project, the Great Wall. Meng Tian, the trusted advisor to Qin, supervised at least 300,000 workers in the building of the Great Wall, including soldiers, peasants, disgraced government officials, and convicted criminals. The workers labored under extremely harsh conditions. First, the regions in which the builders worked were often dangerous and difficult to reach. The wall was constructed through twists and turns of high mountains, partial deserts, swamplands, and beds of quicksand. The weather across northern China ranged from bitterly cold in the winter to blazingly hot in the summer. Exhausted workers often collapsed as a result of the weather extremes, and a great many became ill and died. Finally, builders often had to interrupt their work to fight off northern invaders. Scholars do not know how many workers died while building the Great Wall, but some believe the total to be in the tens of thousands. Chinese historians often refer to the Great Wall as the longest graveyard in the world because of the countless numbers of workers buried within the wall itself. It took Meng Tian and his workers more than 10 years to complete the Great Wall. When it was finished, it extended more than 1,500 miles along China's northern borders. The eastern half of the wall was made of stone and brick, and the western wall was considered to be created of massed walls of dirt. The average height of the Great Wall was about 25 feet, and its base was anywhere from 15 to 30 feet thick. Despite its immense size, the Great Wall did not, in fact, successfully prevent invaders from entering China. Despite the many achievements of Qin, ancient Chinese writing reveal he was unable to find happiness, and that the root of his unhappiness was his terror of death and his desire to live forever and be immortal. In 212 BCE, a magician told Qin Shi Huangdi that evil spirits were to blame for the emperor's failure to find the immortality potion. The magician warned the emperor he would never achieve immortality unless he hid from the evil spirits. As a result, the emperor built a large network of secret passages and covered pathways so he could travel unseen among his 270 palaces. In 2010 BC, after more than 10 years as emperor of China, Emperor Qin died unexpectedly at the age of 49 while searching for an elixir of immortality. While no one knows the exact cause of his death, some scholars think he may have accidentally poisoned himself by drinking various potions in an effort to gain immortality. The emperor's advisors worried about his death and made sure that no one was aware he had died until his body got back to the capital. Ancient Chinese writing reports that work began on Qin Shi Huangdi's tomb when he inherited the throne at age 13. About 700,000 workers built the emperor's tomb, which covered 8 square miles and was located inside Mount Li, near the city now known as Xi'an. Many of the tomb workers were buried alive with the emperor because Qin's son did not want grave robbers to find the underground city made of bronze with rivers and seas filled with mercury. The tomb also contained marvelous tools, precious objects. Artisans made crossbows into traps so that any grave robbers would meet sudden death. Most amazing of all, artists crafted an entire army of soldiers made of fired, unglazed clay called terracotta warriors for the tomb, and they are actually located far away from the tomb, about 2 miles. So far, archaeologists have discovered several thousand life-size figures, including archers, foot soldiers, chariot drivers, and horses. The terracotta army faces towards and leads the emperor into the next world. And if you're interested in more slides about the discovery of the terracotta warriors, you can see my pictures of my trip there, as well as stories about how they were discovered.